tyrant, arsonist, the guy who fiddled while Rome burned. You hear the name Nero, and you immediately think of one of history's greatest villains. But what if that caricature, the one that's been cemented for 2,000 years, is hiding a story that's way more complex and honestly way more tragic? What if the monster was made, not born? Well, to figure that out, we've got to unravel the gilded tragedy of Nero. Right off the bat, we're hit with this pretty provocative idea that Nero is one of the most misunderstood figures in all of history. So if we want to get to the truth, we have to peel back centuries of propaganda to find the actual man underneath. And that journey, well, it starts long before he ever wore the emperor's crown. So first, let's just get it out there. The popular image, the myth of Nero, is incredibly powerful. He's the emperor who supposedly torched his own city, just for fun, and then, to dodge the blame, he launched this horrific persecution against a small, little-known group called the Christians. This right here, this is the foundation of his monstrous reputation. But that's just too simple, isn't it? History is never a comic book with clear-cut heroes and villains. So the real question we have to ask is, how does a person, a leader, actually get to that point? For Nero, the answer is tangled up in a family tree that is, frankly, terrifying. To really get Nero, you have to look at his inheritance. And I'm not talking about money or power. I'm talking about a legacy of pure violence, trauma, and this relentless ambition that would pretty much define his entire life. Let me tell you, this was not a happy home. His father, Gnaeus Domitius, was famously cruel. I mean, this is a guy who ran over a child for sport. When Nero was born, his own father apparently said that any child of theirs could only be a disaster for Rome. And his mother, Agrippina, she was a brilliant, ruthless survivor who literally clawed her way back from exile to the very heart of power. But Agrippina's cruelty didn't just come out of nowhere. It was forged in some serious trauma. She watched her own mother get beaten, saw her family starved to death by the Emperor Tiberius, and she had to survive the absolute madness of her brother Caligula's reign. This cycle of violence was the very air Nero breathed from the moment he was born. Okay, and this is where the story takes a really surprising turn. I mean, with an upbringing like that, you'd expect a total disaster from day one, right? But believe it or not, the first 5 years of Nero's reign were widely seen as a kind of mini golden age. For a little while, it really seemed like his better angels might actually win. He was guided by these two mentors, a no-nonsense soldier named Burrus and the brilliant philosopher Seneca. And the young emperor was seen as a total breath of fresh air. He was generous, he was kind, he was accessible, he promised good government. And for a while, Rome actually believed him. And if you need any proof of the man he could have been, this is it. Faced with signing his very first death warrant, the young Nero said this, full of regret, "Oh, how I wish I had never learned to write." Now that is a world away from the tyrant he would become. So what changed? The answer, in one word, his mother. See, Agrippina hadn't maneuvered her son onto the throne just to watch from the sidelines. Oh no, she planned to rule right through him. So the main job for Seneca and Burrus wasn't just guiding Nero. It was this constant, draining battle to contain the ferocious ambition of the empress mother. This power struggle couldn't last. Something had to give. And Nero's eventual break from his mother, well, that would be the single most important moment of his life. It was a liberation that led directly to his ruin. The way he finally did it is so bizarre, it's almost comical, if it weren't so horrific. He had a special boat belt designed to just fall apart at sea and drown her. And in this moment of high drama, the machine actually worked. But Agrippina, a true survivor to the end, just swam to shore. Completely terrified that she survived, Nero dropped all the theatrics and just sent a soldier to finish the job. With his mother gone, the final check on his impulses was just gone. The nightmares of her murder would haunt him for the rest of his life. But while he was awake, Nero was finally free to become the person he always believed he was. An artist, a performer, and an architect of his own wildest fantasies. And the extravagance was immediate and just legendary. Get this. His new wife, Empress Poppaea, required the milk of 500 donkeys for her bath. Every single day. That was the new normal for imperial luxury. But nothing, and I mean nothing, symbolized his new reality more than the Domus Aurea, the Golden House. This wasn't just a palace, it was a revolution in architecture. It had this massive, revolving dome that turned in sync with the stars, probably powered by water and hydraulics. It was an absolute engineering marvel, and it was so huge and so expensive that it literally bled the Roman treasury dry. Then, in AD 64, disaster strikes, the Great Fire of Rome. Now, let's be clear, Nero was not in the city when it started, and he did not start it, but the rumor was just too useful to let go to waste. He used all that cleared land to expand his golden house, and needing someone to blame for the whole tragedy, he turned on the Christians. After the fire, everything just unraveled with terrifying speed. In AD 65, a huge conspiracy among the nobles showed him just how hated he'd become. So what was his response? He basically abandoned Rome to go on a grand tour of Greece, not as a general but as an artist, competing in music and poetry contests. Meanwhile, back in Rome, the empire started to crack, and soon it was an open revolt. His own guards deserted him. The Senate, the same institution he promised to respect, declared him an enemy of the state. The artist who saw himself as a living god was now a fugitive, being hunted in his own city. So what's the final act for the artist emperor? It's these famous, haunting last words. "What's an artist dies with me." Even in his final moments, he didn't see himself as a failed emperor or a tyrant. No, in his own mind, he was a great artist that the world was tragically losing. It just perfectly captures the grand delusion that defined his entire life and ultimately his downfall. And here it is, the final confounding piece of the puzzle. While the Roman elite, the people who wrote the history books, despised him, for years after his death, ordinary people would come to his tomb and leave flowers. So was he a monster, a misunderstood artist, or something else entirely? Maybe the real tragedy of Nero is that he was all of those things, all at once.